And when God begins to move in your life, divine intervention often shows up in ways that are impossible to explain through human logic. And you start noticing patterns that feel too precise to be coincidences, the right people appearing at the right time, a closed door suddenly opening, or a problem resolving itself in a way that seems miraculous. This is not random, it is the invisible hand of God working behind the scenes and rearranging everything for your good. Sometimes He doesn't change your situation immediately, but He begins to shift hearts, environments, and even time itself to align with His purpose. And divine intervention is subtle yet powerful. It interrupts what was meant to harm you and turns it into something that propels you forward. And it's when things fall apart only to come together in a higher order you never could have planned yourself. Often, and this divine help comes in moments when you feel weakest, when you've exhausted every effort, prayed every prayer, and nearly lost hope. And that's when God steps in. He allows you to reach the end of yourself so that you can finally see that your strength was never enough. His was. And you realize that the delay was never denial but preparation. He was aligning people, opportunities, and timing behind the scenes so that when your blessing came, it would not just sustain you temporarily, but elevate you permanently. And divine intervention often begins with disruption. Something you thought you needed may be taken away, or a path you were sure was right suddenly closes. And at first, it feels like loss, but later you understand that it was redirection. God blocks certain roads because He knows they lead to destruction. And even when you can't see it, you also begin to notice divine timing in everything. The job you didn't get, the person who walked away, and the move that didn't happen. All of it begins to make sense in hindsight. You start to see that every no was a protection, and every wait was an invitation to trust Him more deeply. God intervenes not only to change your circumstances, but also to shape your heart. And He wants to teach you dependence, patience, and surrender. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not what happens around you, but what happens within you. And the transformation of your faith from anxiety to peace, from control to trust, becomes the evidence that God is at work. When He intervenes, and even your enemies become instruments of your growth, what was meant for evil begins to turn into fuel for your purpose. And you start walking through life not with fear, but with quiet confidence that heaven is backing you. And when you least expect it, and breakthroughs unfold in ways that can't be explained. An impossible debt gets paid, a relationship is healed, or a path opens where there was none. And divine intervention doesn't always come with thunder or lightning. Sometimes it whispers through a small coincidence that changes everything. And you'll know it's God because it brings peace, clarity, and alignment, not confusion or chaos. You'll feel His fingerprint on every detail. And once you experience this kind of help, you never doubt again that your life is being guided by divine hands. As this help continues and you begin to notice another powerful sign, an unshakable inner peace. It's not that your problems disappear, but they no longer have power over your spirit. The noise of the world fades. And then you start to hear a deeper stillness within you, the voice of God assuring you that all is well. This peace is not built on circumstances, and it's built on trust. Even when everything looks uncertain, you feel safe because you know that God is in control. And this peace surpasses understanding because it doesn't depend on explanation. You can't reason it out, and yet you feel it in your bones. And when God is helping you, chaos might still surround you, but it can't shake you. You find yourself calm in situations that once would have broken you. And your mind becomes clear, your heart steady, and your spirit firm. You realize that worry accomplishes nothing, but trust moves mountains. And this peace becomes your anchor. It holds you steady in the storms of life, even when others panic. And you carry a quiet confidence that everything will work out for your good. That calmness itself becomes a testimony to others. And people begin to notice that something about you has changed. That you carry a lightness, a spiritual strength that doesn't come from this world. And inner peace is one of the clearest signs that God is near. It's His way of whispering, "I've got you." When you feel this peace, and it means He's already working in your favor, even if you can't see it yet, you stop striving and start resting in His promises. And you begin each day with gratitude instead of fear because you trust the outcome to His will. And in that peace, your connection with Him deepens. And you hear His voice more clearly. You move with more wisdom. And you live with greater freedom. And that peace is not the absence of trouble. It is the presence of God within you. When God begins to help and guide you, and one of the first things that becomes clear is an awakening of spiritual discernment. You start to sense things before they happen and to perceive the difference between what is meant for you and what is meant to deceive you. Discernment is not just the ability to tell right from wrong. And it's the wisdom to recognize what is right from what seems right. And God sharpens your spiritual eyes so you can see through appearances and understand the true intentions behind situations and people. Suddenly, and things that once looked appealing begin to lose their shine, and what once seemed insignificant begins to stand out as divine. And this is how the Holy Spirit starts to train you, by teaching you to listen beyond words, to observe beyond actions, and to feel beyond emotions. And as discernment grows, you begin to understand that not every open door is from God, and not every opportunity is a blessing. And some doors are traps designed to delay or destroy your purpose. But when God is helping you, and He gives you the sensitivity to detect what aligns with His plan, you find yourself hesitating before making decisions you once rushed into. And that inner hesitation isn't fear, it's the Spirit warning you. Sometimes He speaks through discomfort, through a lack of peace, and through a small voice that says, not this way. You learn to trust that voice. And when you do, you avoid mistakes that could have cost you years. And discernment becomes your divine shield, a spiritual radar that detects what eyes can't see. And God also uses discernment to help you identify who is truly for you. Some people come into your life wearing masks and speaking in kindness, but carrying hidden intentions. Without discernment, you might mistake flattery for loyalty. But when God sharpens your spirit and you begin to feel the truth behind their words, you can sense when someone's presence drains your energy or when another person's spirit uplifts you. And it's not judgment, it's recognition. The closer you walk with God, the more sensitive your spirit becomes to both light and darkness. And this heightened awareness protects your peace and helps you stay aligned with your calling. And discernment also allows you to recognize divine opportunities, moments when God is opening a door that doesn't look impressive, but holds destiny inside it. And you may feel drawn to do something that makes no sense in the natural, but the Spirit within confirms that it's right. And that's how God guides those He's helping through quiet nudges and spiritual signals that only make sense after you obey. And every act of obedience strengthens your discernment, allowing you to hear His voice more clearly each time. Then, and after discernment comes the unfolding of unexpected breakthroughs. Once you start moving in alignment with God's guidance and doors open in ways you never imagined, you begin to experience divine acceleration. Progress that would have taken years happens in months. And when God is helping you, He doesn't just guide you, He goes before you to prepare the way. What others have to struggle for, and He places in your path with ease. This doesn't mean life becomes effortless, but it means that divine favor surrounds your efforts, and your steps become ordered. What once felt blocked begins to flow. Breakthroughs often appear after a long season of testing. And God allows pressure to build until the appointed time, and then He releases it all at once in your favor. Suddenly, and things you prayed for years begin to manifest. You find yourself walking into rooms you weren't qualified for, and receiving blessings that don't make sense on paper. That's the mark of divine intervention, the kind that no one can take credit for but God. And when breakthroughs happen, they don't just benefit you, they become a testimony that inspires others to believe again. However, and divine breakthroughs rarely come the way you expect. Sometimes they arrive disguised as endings. A door may close, a job may be lost, or a relationship may fall apart. And only later do you realize that those losses were setups for something greater. God uses disappointment as direction. And what felt like rejection was actually protection. What looked like failure was the foundation for your next miracle. When you're walking with God, and breakthroughs are not just sudden, they are strategic. Every event fits perfectly into His divine plan, even when it feels random at first. And when breakthroughs begin to unfold, you'll also notice that resistance increases. This is because every blessing attracts spiritual opposition. But the same God who opens the door gives you the strength to walk through it. He doesn't just give you miracles, He gives you wisdom to sustain them. And you learn to depend on Him more than ever, knowing that each new level comes with new battles, but also greater grace. And you begin to realize that the real breakthrough is not just in your circumstances, but in your spirit. And it's when you finally understand that God's timing is perfect, His ways are higher, and His plan is always working for your good. And the most beautiful part of unexpected breakthroughs is the peace that follows. You no longer have to chase what God already destined for you, and you don't have to beg for what is already yours. The doors that open by divine power stay open because no man can shut them. And you start living in a rhythm of trust instead of striving, and resting in the truth that everything happening in your life, even the delays and detours, are part of a divine setup for something extraordinary. And when that realization takes root, gratitude becomes your natural response, because you know that every breakthrough, seen or unseen, and is simply the unfolding of God's perfect help in your life. When God begins to truly help you, and one of the first things He does is start removing distractions from your life. At first, it feels confusing and even painful. And people you thought would stay forever begin to drift away. Opportunities that once seemed exciting suddenly lose their appeal. And certain friendships fade without explanation. And habits you once enjoyed start to feel empty. This isn't punishment, it's purification. And God is clearing space for what's next. You can't move into your divine purpose carrying everything and everyone from your past season. And some people were meant to walk with you only for a while, not for a lifetime. When God is preparing to elevate you, He will first separate you. And the separation season is often misunderstood. It can feel lonely and strange because everything familiar begins to shift. And you may even start questioning if you did something wrong. But in truth, it's a divine act of love. And God removes what distracts you from hearing His voice clearly. He detaches you from people and things that drain your spirit, and even if they once brought you comfort, many times, and He allows confusion to rise around you so that you stop leaning on the wrong voices and begin to depend on Him alone. And you realize that not everyone who smiles with you carries your best interest in their heart. And some relationships were keeping you small because they could not handle your growth. When God separates you, and He's not just protecting you from others, He's protecting your focus. And He knows how easily your attention can scatter when you're surrounded by noise. And you may notice that you're no longer interested in conversations that lack depth, entertainment that doesn't feed your spirit, or activities that waste your energy. It's like your soul starts craving quiet and your heart starts yearning for meaning. And this is God fine-tuning your spirit so you can hear His direction without interference. In this silence, He begins to reveal what's next for you. And you start to understand that solitude is not isolation, it's preparation. Sometimes separation also looks like loss, losing a job, a relationship, or a sense of security. But if you look closely, every loss carries divine logic. God removes what you cling to so you can finally hold on to Him. And when you release what no longer serves your growth, He fills that space with something greater. It might be a new purpose, a new opportunity, or simply a deeper sense of peace. What once felt like rejection becomes redirection. And you begin to see that letting go was the only way to make room for the blessing He's been preparing. As you walk through this refining process, and something else begins to grow stronger inside you, your faith. When God is helping you, He doesn't just fix your circumstances, and He builds your trust in Him. Faith deepens when there's nothing left to hold on to but God Himself. And the removal of distractions exposes what your faith was really built on. Was it comfort, people, or control? When all that fades, and you're left with a choice to panic or to believe. And when you choose belief, something shifts. You stop needing to see the whole plan. And you just trust that if He led you here, He'll lead you through. This deepened faith is not blind optimism. And it's the quiet assurance that no matter what it looks like, God's promise still stands. And you begin to recognize that your life is not random. It's orchestrated. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment was part of His divine training. And your patience grows because you've seen Him come through before. You stop chasing after answers and start waiting in peace. And faith becomes not something you practice occasionally, but a way of living, a constant awareness that God is involved in every detail. When faith deepens and fear begins to lose its grip, you stop worrying about how things will unfold because you know who is in control, even in moments of uncertainty, and you find strength rising within you. And it's the type of confidence that doesn't come from knowledge, but from experience. You've seen too much of God's goodness to doubt Him now. And you realize that what looked like delay was God protecting you from premature blessings. And you start to thank Him for the no just as much as the yes, because you know that both are part of His plan. And this kind of faith changes how you see everything. You no longer measure God's presence by your comfort level. And you understand that He's just as present in the storm as He is in the calm. And you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what are you teaching me? You recognize that faith doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you get stronger. And the same trials that once made you anxious now make you grow. You start to see every challenge as an opportunity to witness His power again. And as your distractions fade and your faith deepens, life begins to flow with new clarity. And you stop trying to control outcomes and instead learn to trust the process. You understand that God doesn't waste anything, not pain, not waiting, and not separation. Everything is part of the divine design to build your strength and sharpen your purpose. You begin to walk lighter and with peace in your heart and confidence in your steps, knowing that even when you can't see the full picture, God is guiding every move. And the more He removes from your path, and the more room He creates for faith to flourish. And that faith becomes the bridge between where you are and where He's taking you. And when God is truly helping you, you begin to experience a flow of divine favor that can't be explained by logic or effort. And things start to align in ways that feel almost supernatural. You find yourself in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people, and receiving opportunities that seem far beyond your qualifications. This is not coincidence. It's God's hand marking your path. Divine favor means you are surrounded by grace that speaks on your behalf even when you're silent. It opens doors that talent alone could not open. And it shields you from traps that others fall into. It's not something you can earn through perfection. It's something granted through relationship. And when your heart aligns with God's will, His favor becomes your covering. And you notice that situations that should have gone against you start working in your favor. And maybe an unexpected blessing arrives when you're down to your last resource, or someone chooses to help you without knowing why. And that's what divine favor looks like, unearned kindness orchestrated by heaven. God places your name in rooms you've never entered. And He positions people to speak on your behalf without you asking. It's not luck, it's divine strategy when you live under His favor. And what's hard for others becomes effortless for you because He's already paved the way. Yet, divine favor isn't always about material gain. And sometimes it shows up as protection from unseen harm, as strength to endure, or as wisdom that sets you apart. And it's the unseen grace that keeps you standing when life tries to knock you down. Favor follows obedience. As you walk in God's direction, and He amplifies your efforts and multiplies your results, even your small steps of faith produce big outcomes because His blessing magnifies them. And the beauty of favor is that it's not something you have to chase. It chases you when your heart is aligned with His purpose. And favor finds you no matter where you go. And the more you experience this divine favor, and the more you realize it's not just for your comfort, it's for His glory. God blesses you so that others can see His goodness through your life. And your story becomes a testimony showing what happens when someone fully trusts God's timing. You begin to live with a quiet confidence. And not because life is easy, but because you know you're covered by grace. The presence of favor transforms your perspective. And you no longer fight for recognition. You trust that what's meant for you will find you. You don't compete or compare. And because you understand that your portion is already secured by heaven, as this favor continues to unfold. And something even deeper begins to awaken within you, clarity of purpose. When God starts to help you, confusion begins to lift. And you start to see why certain things happened, why certain doors closed, and why certain people left. And What once felt like chaos now looks like divine construction. God reveals the threads that connect your past pain to your present purpose. And you begin to realize that every trial, every delay, and every disappointment were not random events, they were training grounds. And each experience was molding you for the assignment ahead. Clarity of purpose doesn't usually come all at once. It arrives in layers. And God shows you glimpses, leading you step by step as you follow His God. He reveals more. And you begin to understand your unique calling, the reason you were created, and the impact you're meant to have. And this clarity brings peace because you no longer feel lost or uncertain about your direction. And you stop trying to imitate others and start walking confidently in your own lane. You realize that your life has meaning beyond survival, and it carries divine intent. With this new sense of purpose, your priorities shift, and you no longer invest your energy in things that don't align with your calling. You become more intentional with your time, your words, and your relationships. Even your goals start to change. Instead of chasing worldly success, you seek divine significance. You start asking not, and what do I want to do? What was I created to do? That question becomes the compass for your decisions. And as you walk in alignment with that purpose, everything begins to fall into place. The right opportunities, resources, and connections start to appear, and not through striving, but through divine alignment. There's a deep joy that comes from walking in purpose. And you no longer feel the constant restlessness that comes from living outside of God's will. Each day feels meaningful, even when it's challenging. And because you know you're on the right path, you begin to feel a fire within you, a holy motivation that pushes you to keep going. And even when others give up, you no longer need external validation because you're being fueled by divine conviction. When divine favor and clarity of purpose work together, your life begins to move with supernatural rhythm. Doors open at the perfect time, and resources flow when needed, and peace follows you even through uncertainty. You stop forcing outcomes because you realize you are being led. And this combination of favor and purpose becomes the essence of your divine partnership with God. He directs, you obey. He provides, you walk forward. And you start living not by reaction, but by revelation. Everything about your journey becomes intentional, sacred, and beautifully timed in that space. And your confidence no longer comes from what you can do, but from what God is doing through you. And you live with the assurance that your story is unfolding exactly as it should, even when challenges arise. And you face them with faith because you know that divine favor will sustain you and divine purpose will guide you. And what once confused you now makes sense. Every season, every step, every delay was part of God's perfect design to prepare you for this moment. And when you reach that realization, you finally understand what it means to live under the constant help of a loving and intentional God. And when God is actively helping you, one of the most powerful signs you'll experience is accelerated growth. And it's as if everything in your life begins to move faster, yet smoother. What used to take years to learn suddenly clicks. And the lessons that once required painful repetition now come through clarity and revelation. And this acceleration isn't the result of human effort. It's divine timing taking over. When God decides it's your season to grow, no obstacle, delay, or distraction can stop it. He redeems lost time. The things you thought you missed, the years you believed were wasted, and start to produce fruit in unexpected ways. You realize that He wasn't denying you, He was preparing you. And accelerated growth means your spiritual maturity expands rapidly. And you start to understand the deeper meaning behind events instead of reacting to them emotionally. You develop patience without bitterness, and wisdom without pride, and strength without hardness. God stretches you so that you can carry the blessings He's about to release. Sometimes, and this acceleration feels uncomfortable because growth always requires pressure. He pushes you into new responsibilities, new revelations, and new levels of faith that challenge your comfort zone. What once scared you now feels natural because your perspective has evolved, and you begin to see problems as opportunities for refinement rather than punishment. This season of rapid growth often comes after a long period of waiting. And you might have felt like nothing was happening, but during that time God was building your roots. Now that the foundation is strong, and He can expand your reach. You start receiving ideas, visions, and instruction that seem too big for you, yet you know they're from Him. And the same things that once intimidated you now inspire you. Your confidence grows not because you believe in your own power, but because you've seen what happens when you walk with divine guidance. You start moving with purpose, speed, and certainty, not rushing ahead, but flowing in rhythm with God's timing. As your growth accelerates, you also notice changes in your relationships and environment. And people who can't handle your elevation begin to fall away, not because they're bad, but because they no longer align with your assignment. And God connects you with new voices, mentors, and communities that match your new level of maturity. And He places you where you can thrive and contribute meaningfully. And you start to see that acceleration doesn't just change your speed. It transforms your circle, your mindset, and your capacity. And you outgrow old patterns of fear and limitation, and you begin to think from a place of abundance and faith. Yet, growth without protection can be dangerous. And that's why alongside this acceleration, God provides divine protection from evil. As your influence and impact increase, so does spiritual opposition. But when God is with you, He forms a hedge around you that no enemy can penetrate. This protection isn't always visible, but you can feel it. And situations that could have gone wrong suddenly turn in your favor. Attacks meant to harm you lose their power before they even reach you. And people who plot against you are exposed before they can act. This is not luck, it's divine defense. God becomes your shield and blocking dangers you never even knew existed. Divine protection doesn't mean trouble won't come. It means trouble won't win. You might face challenges, but they won't destroy you. You'll walk through fire, but come out without burns, because His presence surrounds you like armor. He confuses your enemies and blinds your adversaries and makes your path straight even in darkness. And sometimes His protection looks like rejection. You're kept out of certain situations not because you're unworthy, but because He's saving you from unseen harm. You begin to thank Him for the doors that didn't open, realizing they would have led to pain. And every closed door becomes proof of His care. As you experience this divine shield, your fear starts to dissolve. And you walk with peace, knowing that nothing happens without God's permission. You stop living in anxiety about what others might do or say. And you no longer waste energy fighting battles that belong to the Lord. You simply stand firm in faith and trusting that He's defending you from what you can't see. Even in moments of uncertainty, you sense His covering, and you feel the assurance that you're being watched over, guided, and surrounded by a power greater than any darkness. God's protection also includes the guarding of your mind and spirit. He keeps you from falling into deception or despair when lies are spoken against you, and He gives you the wisdom to stay silent and let truth reveal itself. When the enemy tries to plant fear or doubt, He fills you with calm and confidence. And the same Spirit that accelerates your growth also sustains your peace. And you realize that the battles you no longer have to fight are the greatest evidence of His help. Together, and accelerated growth and divine protection create a divine balance. As God pushes you forward, He also shields you, and He enlarges your territory while ensuring that you're safe within it. And you don't have to fear your own success, because He equips you with the character to handle it and the covering to protect it. And you move boldly into new seasons, knowing that whatever comes against you must first go through Him. Every step you take is guarded, and every path you walk is ordered, and every challenge you face becomes a testimony of His faithfulness. Through this process, and you come to understand that divine help is not just about receiving blessings, it's about being prepared and protected to sustain them. And God's acceleration takes you to places you never imagined, and His protection ensures that you stay there. You begin to live with quiet confidence, and knowing that your growth is intentional and your safety is secured. Every season of your journey becomes evidence that when God helps you, and no force, seen or unseen, can stop the destiny He's already set in motion for your life. When God's hand is upon you, and one of the most beautiful signs of His presence is the overflowing sense of gratitude that begins to fill your heart. And gratitude becomes your natural state, not because everything is perfect, because you begin to see His fingerprints in every detail of your life. And you start to notice how He's been protecting you all along, guiding your steps and working miracles you once overlooked. And things you used to take for granted now feel sacred. The breath in your lungs, the sunrise, the peace in your mind, and the people who stayed when others walked away. You begin to realize that every moment, every challenge, and every blessing has been a thread in the divine tapestry of your story. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's missing to what's already there. And in doing so, it opens the door for even greater blessings. This overflow of thankfulness changes how you speak and how you think. And you stop complaining about what you don't have and start praising God for what He's already done. Gratitude becomes your weapon against discouragement. And every time the enemy tries to make you focus on lack, you counter with thanksgiving. The more you thank God, and the more you see His goodness manifest in unexpected ways, it's as if your thankfulness magnetizes blessings. And you begin to understand that God responds to a grateful heart, not because He needs your praise, but because gratitude shows that you trust His plan even when you don't understand it. This kind of gratitude isn't shallow or forced. And it's not just saying thank you when things go right. It's maintaining a posture of praise even when life feels uncertain. And you thank Him in advance for what hasn't yet manifested, knowing that if He promised it, it will come. Gratitude becomes faith in action. And it turns your waiting room into a place of worship, even in tears. And you find reasons to be thankful because every hardship you've endured has brought you closer to Him. Gratitude transforms your perspective and helping you realize that God's goodness isn't proven by your comfort, but by His consistency. As you live in gratitude, something supernatural happens, and your heart becomes lighter. Anxiety loses its grip because you begin to see how often God has carried you through what should have destroyed you. And the weight of worry is replaced by the warmth of trust. You no longer measure your worth by your possessions or achievements, but by your awareness of His presence. Gratitude opens your eyes to the fact that you are already living in answered prayers. And the moments you once rushed through now feel holy because you see God's grace in all of them. And as gratitude deepens and another sign of divine help begins to manifest, the renewal of strength. When God is working in your life, He doesn't just bless you externally, and He restores you from within. There comes a moment when you realize that what once drained you no longer has power over you. The exhaustion, fear, and hopelessness that used to weigh you down begin to lift. It's not that your circumstances suddenly change, but that your spirit becomes infused with new energy, divine strength that doesn't make sense to the natural mind. And this renewed strength feels like a second wind, like God Himself is breathing fresh life into your soul. You wake up with purpose again. And you find yourself doing things you thought you no longer had the energy or courage for. And it's as if the heaviness that once consumed you has been replaced with holy determination. You realize that the strength you lost wasn't gone, and it was simply waiting for God to revive it. He doesn't just recharge your body. He reignites your faith, restores your vision, and renews your joy. And when God renews your strength, you stop relying on your own ability and start depending on His power. You understand that human strength eventually runs out, but divine strength multiplies the more you trust. You stop striving and start flowing with grace. And you no longer need to control every detail because you trust that His power is perfect in your weakness. You begin to echo the scripture, and those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength, and they shall mount up with wings like eagles. This isn't poetic imagery. It's the reality of someone who has learned to lean on God completely. And you notice that even when challenges come, you don't break as easily as before. You bounce back faster, think clearer, and handle stress differently. And that's what divine renewal does. It toughens your spirit while softening your heart. And you no longer fear exhaustion because you know where your source is. Every time life drains you, you return to prayer, worship, and faith. And God refills your spirit with fresh power. Gratitude and renewal work hand in hand. The more grateful you are, the stronger you become. And gratitude keeps your focus on what's possible, while strength gives you the endurance to pursue it. And you begin to live with joy even in difficult seasons because your heart is rooted in trust. You no longer chase peace, you carry it. And you no longer beg for strength, You live in it, and through it all, you recognize that everything good, every ounce of endurance, every breath of hope, and comes from one source of the God who helps restores and strengthens those who belong to Him. When God is truly helping you, and one of the most powerful and undeniable signs is the clarity of your purpose. You no longer wander aimlessly through life and questioning your worth or direction. Instead, your path begins to unfold with divine precision. And what once felt confusing or uncertain now makes sense in hindsight. You see how every detour, every heartbreak, every delay, was preparing you for a greater assignment. God begins to align your passions, your pain, and your talents into something meaningful. And it's as if He switches on a light inside of you, illuminating what you were always meant to do. And the purpose you once searched for tirelessly begins to chase you. You feel drawn toward it naturally, without force or fear. And clarity of purpose doesn't always mean you'll know every step ahead. Rather, you begin to trust the next one. And God gives you enough light for the path in front of you, not the whole journey. You might not understand everything, but deep within your spirit, and you just know this is where you're meant to be. This is what you're meant to do. It's no longer about chasing success, and it's about walking in obedience. When God is your guide, your purpose becomes less about achievement and more about assignment. And you stop comparing your timeline to others because you understand that your story was written uniquely for you. This clarity also brings peace, and you stop trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. You let go of jobs, relationships, and routines that no longer align with who God is shaping you to become. People may not understand your choices, but that's okay. Your calling wasn't given to them. You begin to discern between opportunities and distractions. And what once looked appealing now feels empty if it's not in line with your purpose. And even when you face obstacles, and you endure them differently because you know they're shaping you for your mission, your prayers shift from, God, make this easy, to God, and make me ready. That's when true purpose begins to manifest, not when everything is simple, but when you are steadfast in what He called you to do. And as your purpose unfolds, another sign begins to emerge: a divine peace in chaos. The world around you may be falling apart, but inside you're anchored. You face storms that would have once broken you, yet you remain calm because you know who's in control. And this peace is not the absence of trouble. It's the presence of God in the middle of it. It's supernatural. You can't explain it logically, but you feel it deeply. Even when situations make no sense, you find yourself saying, it's going to be okay, because your spirit knows what your eyes can't see, that God is working behind the scenes. And this divine peace is one of the clearest indicators that God is moving in your life. When you stop being easily shaken by negativity, and when you refuse to panic in the face of uncertainty, and when your mind remains still even as storms rage around you, that's the evidence of God's presence. And peace becomes your confirmation that you are walking in divine timing. It's not that you stop caring, and it's that you stop carrying what's not yours to bear. You hand it over to God and rest in the truth that He never fails. Peace also changes your posture, and you start responding instead of reacting. Instead of fighting every battle, you learn which ones are yours and which ones are God's. And you stop trying to prove yourself to people and start proving your faith through patience. And you no longer rush decisions out of fear or frustration because you trust that what's meant for you will never miss you. And this peace gives you power, not loud, aggressive power, but quiet, unshakable strength. It keeps you grounded when others crumble, and calm when others complain, and hopeful when others give up. When peace becomes your anchor, you notice how different life feels. And the same situations that used to trigger anxiety now feel like opportunities for faith. And you realize that peace doesn't come from perfect conditions, but from perfect trust. Even when nothing changes on the outside, you feel transformed within. And you start living from a place of rest, not resistance. That's when miracles start unfolding naturally. Not because you're striving, but because you're aligned. Clarity of purpose and divine peace work together in perfect harmony. Purpose gives you direction. And peace gives you stability. Without peace, purpose feels overwhelming. Without purpose, peace feels temporary. But when both flow through your life, and you move with confidence, knowing that you are exactly where God wants you to be. And you stop doubting your progress because you understand that even the delays are divine. And you live with assurance that every step you take is guided by His hand. And that's the beauty of walking with God. He doesn't just bless you with things. He blesses you with understanding and serenity. When He helps you, and you no longer chase clarity or calmness, you live in them. You carry peace into every room, purpose into every action, and faith into every season. And you become a living example of divine alignment, someone whose life radiates trust, direction, and grace. That's when you truly know. And God is not just helping you survive, He's helping you step into everything you were created to be.